Hello, Bayview community. This is April 25th, the fourth Sunday of Easter, and welcome to this virtual Vesper service. Last week, we started a series on spiritual care. What is spiritual care? What is a chaplain and what does she do? Last week, we talked about spirituality, and we talked about how spirituality, one way it can be defined, is that it is the way that we human beings make meaning, find our purpose, try to figure out how life makes sense to us. It's also the way we connect to ourselves, to our environment, to others, and to our higher power. So it's about meaning making and connection. And so today, I'd like for us to take the time to focus on emotions, specifically the need in order to be a spiritually well person. I believe that we need to first get to know our emotions, become aware of them, acknowledge them, accept them, work through them, and let them go. Our emotions are a big part of being human. Both all of our difficult emotions, ones that are uncomfortable and painful, sadness, grief, anxiety, anger, as well as our pleasurable emotions, happiness, joy, being excited, hopeful, all of these emotions, they're all tied. And one of the truths is that if we stifle or push down or repress some of our emotions, say our grief or our anger, it's going to affect all of our ability to experience all of our emotions, right? You can't repress one emotion without that affecting all other emotions. So how can we have an open heart and come to be friends with our emotions and work through them? I'd like to share with you a short saying that a resident a couple years back shared with me. It's by Jack Kornfield, a Buddhist practitioner, and he writes, "Compassion is the heart's response to sorrow. We share in the beauty of life and in the ocean of tears. The sorrow of life is part of each of our hearts and part of what connects us to one another. It brings with it tenderness, mercy, and an all-embracing kindness that can touch every being." So our emotions are one way that we truly and deeply connect with one another as well. Now, when I offer spiritual care, one of the first things that I'm looking for is to be with people and their emotions. That's one of the first things I was trained in. This little pamphlet on spiritual care says, "Suffering and illness can bring up many difficult emotions. Spiritual care can help you work through these feelings." And then it has all these different feelings: anger, fear, grief, sadness, depression, shock, confusion, guilt, shame, worry, anxiety, numbness, emptiness, loss of hope, loss of independence, feeling a loss of control, feeling abandoned, feeling like a burden, loss of purpose or meaning. These are all hard emotions to hold, to acknowledge, to process. And that's one of the things that as a chaplain, I've been trained to do, to hold space and be with people, help them to feel and acknowledge their emotions, maybe accept them and normalize them, validate what they're feeling as valid and real, and help people move through. There's so many emotions. Even just learning how to name them is important. This is one of the handouts I got as a chaplain. It's all these different emotions. Becoming emotionally illiterate. So all the different ways that you can describe sadness, remorsefulness, feeling isolated, feeling apathetic. We are richly emotional beings. So a lot of spiritual healing comes from being real, from really expressing our emotions. And I'd like to play a song for us, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, that I think has just a lot of openness and vulnerability.
Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call, hold my hand lest I fall. Take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home.
One of the gifts of our spiritual tradition of the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament is that any human emotion that we want to find, we can find in our scriptures. There's a wide range. The first thing I'd like to just bring up to model emotional vulnerability and being emotionally honest and expressing our emotions, owning them, is in the Hebrew Bible, in the writings. There's a lot of examples of this. There's Lamentations, there's the Psalms, which has everything from praise and thanksgiving to the deepest, darkest pain, anguish, to anger. And then, of course, there's the book of Job, where we just really look at human suffering and the question of why. Why is there human suffering? So I thought we could read two different Psalms. Oh, and there's also Ecclesiastes, which we will also look at. Takes another unique viewpoint of life and all of our experiences. So first, let us read two different Psalms, kind of two examples. So I will share text with you. So this is Psalm 13. Please read along if you would like. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear pain in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I will sleep the sleep of death. And my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your steadfast love, and my heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. And now for another example of emotion in a psalm. We'll read Psalm 103, verses 1 through 5. Let us listen for a word from God. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and do not forget all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquity, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like an eagle's. Next, we'll listen to a famous song that quotes a lot from Ecclesiastes 3, this is another example of letting there be space and room for all of our emotions and all of our experiences. In the stories of life of Jesus in the four gospels in our New Testament, we also see Jesus living a full human and emotional life. So we see Jesus angry when he goes into the temple and he overturns the tables of the money changers who were cheating people out of their money, and he chases them out of the temple feeling anger. We see Jesus weep at the death of his friend Lazarus and seeing all Lazarus's family and community mourning. We see Jesus greatly moved and weeping. And we see Jesus feel anguish and anxiety before his own death, which I want to read a section of that with you all now. This passage comes from the Gospel according to Luke, the 22nd chapter, verses 41 through 45. Let us listen for a word from God. Then Jesus withdrew from the disciples about a stone's throw, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Then an angel from heaven appeared to him and gave him strength. In Jesus' anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat became like great drops of blood falling down on the ground. When Jesus got up from prayer, he came to the disciples, and he found them sleeping because of their grief. So in my spiritual care, a huge part of spiritual care is presence, is being with, not fixing. So in that story of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, oh gosh, oh, this is embarrassing. Gethsemane. I still can't. Anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. For some reason, I can't say the name of the garden correctly. But what Jesus wanted was for the disciples to be with him. But they just can't. They're so overcome with their own grief that they end up falling asleep. And one of the greatest things that we can do for others is to be with them. We don't have to have the right words for when people are going through hard things. We don't have to fix their situation or make them feel better. Often just being with and listening and validating people's emotions and accepting them just as they are is the most healing thing that we can do. And so and that's one thing that I believe God does for us, and that we human beings try, but do imperfectly for one another and for our own self. We try to love each other and our own selves with gentle presence and acceptance. But I believe God does that. I know for myself, I cause myself a lot of suffering by trying to deny what is. So if I'm angry, by trying to say, no, I shouldn't be angry, or frustrated or anxious, I shouldn't be anxious, and trying to push those feelings away, when I have learned that if I take the time to breathe, to recognize and name what I'm feeling, and then, if it's really feeling a lot of emotions, maybe I can't respond right away. I take time. That doesn't mean I'm repressing, but I take time to process. So maybe I journal, or I do something physical. I walk outside and kind of move energy through. I talk to a trusted friend about how I'm feeling, and then maybe I respond. I discuss, I'm honest and claim my own emotions and speak with another person. This made me really upset, and here's why. Or we may decide to let it go. But our emotions are transitory too. That's another thing. Once we acknowledge, accept them, and let them go, we let them go. And who knows what we may be feeling in the next minute or so, right? So part of, I think, emotional spiritual health is realizing that we all have emotions and that they all are transitory. They move through. The Apostle Paul in the epistle, to the Romans, writes in chapter 12, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. That's pastoral care. That's spiritual care, to be with. And in 1 Peter 5:7, it says, cast all your anxieties on God because God cares for you. We can share all of our feelings with God, as those in the Psalms do. Knowing that our emotions will move through us and that we can deal with them in a healthy way. There's no shame to be had for what we feel. And we, have responsibility for how we act out our emotions. Absolutely. But emotions themselves are neither good nor bad. They just are. And then we get to decide how to process them and move through. And so now for an uplifting song about the fact that troubles don't last always. So, beloved, may you go into this week taking the time to recognize and acknowledge your emotions as valid, to accept them, and then to take responsibility to work through them, and then to let them go, knowing that your God loves you through each and every moment, through the difficult times and the good times. Go in peace to love and to serve the Lord and one another.